Let me clear my throat. And welcome to Stoner Nation. This is the Stoner Nation podcast, where we talk about current events and news updates in the marijuana industry and world. I'm your host, Randy, and today we are going to be catching up on some stuff that's going on. Now, I know I haven't been on here in a while to do a podcast, and that's because of personal affairs. I apologize for that. All right. The first news story we're going to cover today. This is for my people in Virginia. Virginia governor signs marijuana resentencing bill after lawmakers rejected her amendments. Virginia's governor has signed legislation to provide resentencing relief for people who had past marijuana convictions, even after lawmakers declined to adopt her proposed amendments to the legislation that would have significantly scaled back the scope of the reform. Governor Abigail Spencer, Spanberger, or whatever, Governor Abigail Spanberger, Democrat, gave final approval to the bill's HB 26 from Rosia Henson, Democrat, Rosia Henson Jr., who's a Democrat, and Senate Bill 62 from Senate President Pro Tem Luis Lucas, Democrat, on Thursday. As laws have changed in Virginia, it is important to ensure that those who have been previously convicted of offenses under since changed laws receive fair treatment in sentencing review. My administration will work to ensure this process is implemented effectively across the Commonwealth, Spanberger said in a press release. For decades, marijuana enforcement disproportionately impacted minority communities and communities of color, contributing to inequities in the criminal justice system that Virginia must no longer ignore. Well, about time someone's on the same page as me. I've been talking about that for weeks now, for anyone who's been paying attention. Henson said that for too long, Virginians have remained behind bars for conduct the Commonwealth no longer treats as a crime. We actually got a message from Delegate Rosia A. Henson Jr. House Bill 26 has finally been signed into law. Virginians serving time for marijuana offenses no longer treated as crimes now have a path home. Years of hard work from former patrons and advocates, but we got the job done. Then he goes on to actually tell us what the House bill says and stuff like that. We're not even going to waste our time reading all that. If y'all are really that curious, y'all can go find it yourselves. MarijuanaMoment.net. Now, I'm going to continue reading the article. That changes now after years of efforts being blocked under the previous administration. Virginia now has a process to revisit cannabis sentences that no longer reflect current law. Families who have been waiting will finally have a path home, he said. Marijuana enforcement fell hardest on Black Virginians and communities of color for decades. This law begins to right that wrong. The Commonwealth still has work to do. Virginia made a promise when it legalized cannabis. Today we keep it. Separately, lawmakers and advocates are awaiting the governor's action on separate legislation to legalize recreational marijuana sales. After her proposed amendments were similarly rejected by House and Senate last month. They suggested changes to that legislation, including delaying the start date for sales by 6 months, increasing taxes, and it's instituted new criminal penalties for cannabis consumers. The resentencing reform, meanwhile, creates a process by which people who are incarcerated or on community supervision for certain felony offenses involving the possession, manufacturing, sale, or distribution of marijuana will receive an automatic hearing to consider modifications to their sentences. Spanberger last month had sent lawmakers suggested amendments that would have required affected persons to proactively file petitions to get the relief instead of having courts proceed automatically. The Senate and House of Delegates, however, declined to take up the proposal, effectively rejecting it and sending the original legislation back to Spanberger's desk. Henson, the sponsor of the House version of the bill, had said he was willing to accept the governor's changes even if he worried that it would mean that some people with cannabis convictions would fall through the cracks simply because they lacked a lawyer or did not know how to ask. The full legislature did not agree to the changes, however, and now House Bill 26 and Senate Bill 62, as originally passed, have been enacted into law. The relief will apply to people whose convictions or adjudications for the conduct that occurred prior to January 1st, 2021, when a new state law legalizing personal possession and home cultivation of marijuana went into effect. State and local correction officials will be required to identify and notify eligible people of their rights for resentencing relief, and then work with courts to reschedule hearings automatically. Henson said last month that the resentencing legislation was built for the people still paying the price for something Virginia has made legal. If the Commonwealth changed the law, it has an obligation to revisit the consequences, still being borne by people convicted under the old one, he said. The governor's office claimed in a press release when she proposed her amendments that they clarify that under no circumstances would reconsideration be allowed for violent offenses that remain illegal in Virginia, from armed burglary to firearm possession to distribution of fentanyl, heroin, and other dangerous drugs. But Henson said that while he shares the governor's commitment to ensuring that violent offenders are not eligible for this relief, and that the commitment is reflected in the bill itself, which already excluded individuals convicted of acts of violence under Virginia law. Spanberger's release last month did not make any mention of her major actual change to the bill, which is to remove the provisions for automatic relief for people with cannabis convictions. The governor's amendment also proposed to remove deadlines for court hearings of resentencing relief. Similar legislation was approved by lawmakers last session, but it was vetoed by then-Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican. Cannabis reform advocates praised the governor's decision to ultimately sign the resentencing bill. Today we celebrate the work it took to get here to support the over 1,200 people that can receive relief from this bill. Chelsea Higgs Wise, Executive Director of Marijuana Justice, said people still incarcerated on probation for past offenses will now have more opportunities for freedom. Stephanie Shepard, Executive Director of the Last Prisoner Project, said that the justice in Virginia moved forward today. I served a 10-year sentence in federal prison for a first-time nonviolent cannabis offense, she said. I know what it means to lose birthdays, holidays, and everyday moments with the people you love because of outdated cannabis policies. This new law will give eligible Virginians a real chance for justice in the state's legal system. Separately, Spanberger signed several other reform bills last month, including measures to protect parental rights of marijuana consumers and allow patients to access medical cannabis in hospitals, which I did cover last month a little bit. And hi, how you doing over there on TikTok? And how you doing on Rumble and Locals? How you guys doing today? Feel free to chime in whenever you want. It's welcome. Now, the cannabis reform advocacy organizations, meanwhile, sent a letter earlier this month urging the governor to allow the adult use marijuana sales bill to take effect. Marijuana Moment is oh well, no, that's just telling me about the website, but yeah, that's it for that article. Now, for those of you who have been following me and listening to what I've been saying about marijuana and how we could and what needs to be done with it, and those of you who are waiting for my podcast series, my docu-series on YouTube about it, knows that I've been saying we need to decriminalize marijuana by passing under a sin tax that can do alcohol and marijuana 20% federal sin tax, that the states do their own, but put a federal maximum level of 20%, and state that states can't go above 20% unless they file for permission. And they can't exceed over 40%. At which point in time, we turn around and we repeal the Marijuana Taxation Act of 1937, and we pay reparations to the rest of the families and descendants of all those affected by it. We also turn around and do automatic resentencing hearings and automatically overturn convictions of people with just marijuana or simple drug charges with no violent charges, no violent offenses. At which point in time, we can move on to taking the money from the tax revenue and improving the government's infrastructure. The infrastructure of this nation, including education and the roads and buildings and government stuff. Now, with all that being stated, you're not going to get that from the Democrats and the Republicans working together on a federal level. They're too stubborn. So what we need somebody who is a Republican but has a mindset of what I just read about the Virginia governor. All right, so you need somebody that can speak to the Democrats, although they don't like them, trust me, and actually get the message across to them that, hey, this will be beneficial for everybody if we do it this way. All right, of course, we're going to have to be negotiable on the tax rate and tax percentage. Obviously, that's going to have to be negotiated. I say at 20. There's going to be people that say 40. Either way, if it's at 20%, it's $1.3 billion. It's an American citizens that are legal to smoke marijuana over the age of 21, not including the special allowances that we'll give to people under the age of 21 with specialized circumstances, and if they're under 18 with parents' consent for medical. But you also got to include that the tourism rate across the country will increase by 80%. That 80%, I'm going to say out of that 80%, I'm going to say a vast majority, we're taking 80% and make it to 100 and take it as 100% of tourism that was planned across. So if we were to convert to a different figure, I'm going to say about 75 to 90% of those people that are increased under the 80% tourism increase will turn around and be consuming marijuana. Now, that will increase the tax intake across the country. Now, if you do a 40%, if it's already $1.3 billion in tax revenue, under 20%, that would make it $2.6 billion in tax revenue. On the podcast, I don't let people join in on the guest hosting. This is more like an informative podcast. Now, after I do the docu-series, I will be letting people in. Yeah, I know. I don't get very many views. I don't even get it when I'm on regular, so I'm just regularly streaming. So Yeah, I know. My viewage is a very, very poor viewage. But I do have high profit. No, average profit, but alrighty. Now we're going to get on to Fetterman praises Trump, marijuana and psychedelic reform moves. Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat out of Pennsylvania, is giving some across the aisle credit to President Donald Trump for his administration's moves to federally reschedule marijuana accelerates therapeutic access to psychedelics. I think we could all agree on one thing that President Trump has done about liberalizing marijuana and psychedelics, and now too. Fetterman said in an interview published by Reason on Wednesday, I really am very, very libertarian in a lot of ways, and for those circumstances, the senator said, if you check my record, I've been for legalizing weed, I've been for legal weed forever in that. Politically, that was toxic or certainly not popular, and also psychedelics too. As a libertarian, I don't judge or knock anyone for whatever they knock their edge off to just make it through in this world. To just make it through in this world. Well then, he said, pointing to his opposition to crackdown nicotine products in on an issue on which he has clashed with other Democrats. I actually support Zinn in those things as long as it's legal and safe to do. I think it's important that that's the choice that every American of legal age deserves to have, and to participate in a way that doesn't turn them into a criminal or judge them for those things. Make it as safe as possible. And the senator said the right choice to relax with whatever substances one wants, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, is sacred. Whatever it is, a glass of wine or scotch or sip a little weed. Sip a little weed. What the heck? I guess you can't drink weed these days, can't you? Whatever, sitting in front of the fire pit in your backyard. He said, whatever that is, I think your path for wellness, psychedelics, whatever. I think that it should all be legal without judgment and without punishment or a criminal record. I've been very consistent about that and sharing those things. Fetterman, who has championed cannabis reform since he served as Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor, said. So I do hope it continues to liberalize for that overall. The Department of Justice last month formally moved state-regulated medical marijuana products from Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act to Schedule 3. A hearing scheduled to begin next month will consider the issue of broader cannabis rescheduling. Also last month, Trump signed an executive order aimed at expanding and expediting research on the potential therapeutic benefits of psychedelics. Shortly thereafter, the Food and Drug Administration and Department of Health and Human Services announced steps that they will help with accelerating therapeutic access to psychedelics for patients dealing with serious mental health conditions. Fetterman, for his part, has criticized Pennsylvania GOP lawmakers for holding up marijuana legalization as neighboring states like Ohio move forward with the policy change. Last year, the senator's campaign launched a petition supporting federal marijuana legalization. I am in all favor of that. Sorry, I had to make that side note. He previously criticized President Joe Biden for excluding military-level cannabis policy violations from his mass marijuana pardons. So it looks like there's a Democrat with the right idea. I like that. I like that. The TDS does not exist if you don't let it. Sorry to tell everyone that. And my AI over there is being a really idiot, but whatever. Alrighty. I'll get that one later. Now, I like the fact that he turned around and said that yes, he supports Trump's actions with marijuana. I do believe he is right as well that we do need to focus on broader legalization of it. And yes, I'm eating. This is a stoner podcast. You know, this is what happens. But at the same time, I'm looking at it this way. I've been saying this for a while now, and nobody's been listening to me. So if anyone wants to see real action, vote Randolph Small for president or governor of Florida if you wanted to give me a test run. But let's go on to the next story. And hi to my YouTube viewer that just popped on. How you doing today? The next story is House votes to let military veterans get medical marijuana recommendation from VA doctors. Now, that's actually kind of a big deal. But let's get into it. The House of Representatives has voted to let military veterans receive recommendation for medical marijuana through their doctors at the Department of Veterans Affairs, while also approving a separate amendment focused on therapeutic benefits of psychedelics. The cannabis proposal from Reps Brian Matz, Republican out of Florida, yes, Florida Republican is doing this, as well as Dave Joyce, Republican out of Ohio, and Dinah Titus, a Democrat out of Nevada, passed by a voice vote on Thursday. If enacted into law, the amendment would prevent Virginia from enforcing a long-standing directive that had blocked its providers from assisting. I mean, if enacted into law, the amendment would prevent the VA from enforcing long-standing directive that has blocked its providers from assisting veterans with registering for state medical cannabis programs. Why was that hard to say? Under current policy, VA doctors can discuss marijuana use with their patients. But they cannot fill out forms that help them actually get legal access to cannabis. As a result, veterans need to seek outside, often expensive services from separate providers instead of being able to get assistance from their own VA doctors. That would change under the new amendment from the co-chairs of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, which is now attached to the fiscal year 2027 military construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies appropriation acts. Mast himself, a military veteran who lost 2 legs during combat in Afghanistan, said on the floor ahead of the vote that medical cannabis programs exist in a lot of states. And if former members of the military have doctors that they are seeing inside the Department of Veterans Affairs, and if there is a treatment option that they want to be considered, they want to know if it's right for them. If it's not right for them, if it doesn't fit in good with other prescriptions that they have, you name it. He said, if they want to discuss it, they have to be able to discuss it with their doctor. That is the most important That's the most important person for them to discuss it with, is their doctor. Whether the doctor says, hey, it's good or bad, that's up to the doctor to decide. But they have to be able to have that conversation, Matt said. I tell people often, I was in Afghanistan, lost 2 legs and a finger there. When I woke up in the hospital, I woke up on antidepressants, anti-inflammatories, heavy sleep sedatives, a host of narcotic painkillers. and I weaned myself off of those very quickly. That is not the case for all my brothers and sisters. A lot of these narcotics that people are on and get placed on, especially after injuries, are serious and very difficult to get off and leave long-term lasting effects. Long-term lasting effects, I think they meant to type. There's got to be an ability, again, for people inside the system to have the conversation with their doctor about whether that's right. Titus said that the cannabis is proven to help with a wide variety of medical issues that veterans face, including pain management, PTSD, and opioid addiction. Instead of self-medicating and going outside the VA system, the veterans should be able to speak with a doctor honestly about what their options are, she said. Our veterans deserve the best health care they can get and should not be left behind because the federal government lags behind the states. They need to hear their options and make their choices. Now, there is an audio clip here from Dinah Titus's ex, but there's also something said that she said in her text. Today, I led my colleagues and adopted my and Representative Brian Mast's amendment to allow medical marijuana recommendations at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Our veterans should be able to discuss all their options with a doctor. And now let's take a listen.
Thank you to Mr. Bass for that eloquent defense of this amendment. I too rise in support.
All right, let's go ahead and rewind that.
Thank you to Mr. Mass for that eloquent defense of this amendment. I too rise in support of the Veterans Equal Access Amendment. 40 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia allow medical use of cannabis products, but not something for our veterans who live and work in those places. For the nearly 200,000 veterans who call Nevada home, this common sense amendment would allow healthcare professionals at the VA to just discuss cannabis for medical purposes with their patients. This includes providing information on the state's legal program, answering questions that the veteran may have about information that he's picked up out on the hustings. It would also assist them in filling out any forms that might be required by the state to qualify for medical marijuana assistance. Cannabis is proven to help with a wide variety of medical issues that veterans face, including pain management, PTSD, and opioid addiction. Instead of self-medicating and going outside the VA system, a veteran should be able to speak with a doctor honestly about what their options are. Our veterans deserve the best health care they can get and should not be left behind because the federal government lags behind the states. They need to hear their options and make their choices. So I urge all my colleagues to vote in favor of this amendment because it'll be a meaningful step in the right direction for our veterans and for cannabis. Thank you, Jesse. I just want to thank Mr. Mass, Mr. Joyce for their leadership on this issue. Our veterans sacrifice everything for our country. We don't leave them behind on the field. We shouldn't leave them behind when they come home. And one way that we can serve them is providing them this option when it comes to medical care. They need to have an honest conversation with their doctors to understand what their options are and how they can best recover from the pains that continue after they've come home. So I proudly support this amendment, and I urge all my colleagues to vote in favor of it, and I yield back.
All right. So as you heard out of her own mouth, that was Representative Dina Titus, D-I-N-A. Dinah, I guess. Now, Joyce said that the amendment is about ensuring veterans are not denied access to treatment options that may improve their quality of life. Do you want them getting advice from doctors or bud tenders? Yes, simple question. Many of our service members return home bearing invisible wounds that last long after the battlefield, Joyce said. Chronic pain, PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, depression, and other service-connected conditions that can profoundly affect the quality of their life. Excuse me. Some veterans' traditional treatments have not worked. Others are searching for alternatives that may help manage pain, improve daily function, or reduce reliance on highly addictive opioids. I think there might be a YouTube video. Give me a second. Yep, there is. The House of Representatives has adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, May 14th, 2026. The morning, blah, 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 blah. Don't care.
He could have worked steady days, avoided weekends, and spent his time.
And they turn around and jack up our utility.
Ms. Tlaib for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, DTE.
I'm not going to play the entire 10-hour and 17-minute video unless you guys really want me to, and I'll keep it on going that long. But let's take a listen to a good portion of it and see what goes on. This is really long thing telling them that they go back into session on the 14th, Thursday, whatever. The House meets again at 12 p.m. for legislative business. Right now they're coming in. There we
House
go.
will be in order. Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., May 14th, 2026. I hereby appoint the Honorable Addison P. McDowell to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 6, 2026, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and the minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties with time equally allocated between the parties, and each member other than the majority and the minority leader and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, DTE Energy has a monopoly in my district. It's the primary source of utilities for gas and electricity for my residents. This is why it was critical and important for me to introduce the Make DTE Pay Act. It would substantially increase monetary penalties on utilities like DTE Energy when they seek customer.
A few weeks ago to work with Cale Perk, the city.
Earl A. Harris.
And they turn around and jack up our utility bills year after year. That's why it is critical and important that we introduce the Make DTE Pay Act. I encourage my colleagues to understand the importance of this. This legislation forces utilities like DTE to make a choice: follow the Clean Air Act or face real financial consequences when they try to raise rates on customers that they already harmed. We have to change the math. Polluting our communities must be as bad for business as it is for our health. Our families deserve clean air, reliable service, and accountability, not excuses and higher bills. Mr. Speaker, Republicans are trying to drag this country back to Jim Crow South, where black political power is stripped, our voices are stripped, silenced, and dismissed. This time, not with the hoods, but with maps. In court.
I'm sorry, I don't have time for that party bullshit. Especially when I'm a Republican and I'm literally trying to fight to stop it from going to Jim Crow's. Because I don't hold an office, everyone thinks I'm crazy. But yet, when people in office do the same shit I'm talking about doing, all of a sudden, everyone's going, oh, well, shit. Maybe he was right. I have a confirmed IQ of 210. I have spent my entire life doing research and studying. I have read the Constitution. I have read every encyclopedia that my mom could get her hands on. Entire sets. I have done enough research that I could literally write books about subjects. On a vast aspect of subjects. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about when it comes down to certain things and how we could legalize or do things. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about when it comes down to certain laws and actions. So, when these lawmakers turn around and do something I've already been talking about, maybe people should start listening to me. I've been 100% accurate in everything I have said to date on these laws and these actions. So, yeah. Angela can go somewhere.
Well, to care deeply about those that maybe won't have access to the same
My phone's
opportunities
being
many of
used.
us had in this chamber. Housing is a human right. Our government has a responsibility to treat it that way.
Where is this representative from? I didn't catch her state, but I think she said Delaware. Shouldn't you deregulate and break down that monopoly and then turn around and make the energy suppliers go ahead and be in charge of clean energy?
Oh, Mac, for 5
As
minutes.
every other damn state's done for the most part in that region. People get 5-minute segments.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor and recognize a business in my district celebrating its 100th birthday this month. Harris Baking Company of Rogers, Arkansas, began operations back in 1926 under the leadership of Earl A. Harris. During the Great Depression, the bakery team produced up to 250 loaves each day and sold them for a mere 10 cents a loaf. Mr. Harris, grateful for his employees, made sure during that difficult time that none of those employees missed a check. He expanded it in 1937 and upped the daily production to 1,200 loaves a day, and in 1950, a slicing and wrapping operation was added.
A few weeks ago to work with Kale, PERC, the City of Portland, and many others to elevate the work we all need to be doing to protect our Laotian and Hmong immigrants in our community from ICE's cruelty and lawlessness. He wanted his people to be informed, protected, and seen. That was Kale.
He could have worked steady days, avoided weekends, and spent his time behind a desk. Instead, he chose the night shifts and the hardest hours, often working the same shifts as the youngest officers under his command. That was the kind of public servant that Dan Redmond was. That was the kind of leader he was. Over the course of his career, he responded to some of the most difficult and tragic moments our city has ever faced. He was there in the aftermath of violence, in the chaos of crime scenes, and in the solemn heartbreak that follows unspeakable loss. He served as the initial command officer in hundreds of incidents, moments that would test anyone's strength, courage, and humanity. And yet through it all, Dan persevered because of his spirit and his virtue. Those who knew him best knew a kind and easygoing man who led with empathy. Dan cared deeply for his fellow officers. He made it a point to be there for them in their precincts, on the streets, and at the scenes that would stay with them long after their shifts ended.
I can't find what I'm looking for in there, so we're done. We're done there. I'm going to go to YouTube and see if I can't find it. Wow, I can't even find it. Okay. Okay, they don't have anything about it online, but yet I was able to find small clips. Okay, that doesn't make no sense. Alright, well then we're going to go to Google. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I got somebody messing with me. Yeah, I got you. You got your pronoun human. I've been meaning to message you on Discord. Message me privately your Discord stuff and I'll get you, alright? Despite the fact apparently it just happened, I can't find it anywhere, so. We don't got much longer to go on this, so let's just go ahead and read what the actual thing says. SEC. Now the Veterans Medical Marijuana Amendment reads SEC dot blah blah. This is a big blank dot none. Of the funds appropriated or otherwise made available to the Department of Veterans Affairs in this act may be used to enforce Veterans Health Directive 1315 as it relates to the policy stating that the VHA providers are prohibited from completing forms of registering veterans for participation in a state-approved medical marijuana program. 2. The directive of the Deputy Undersecretary for the Health of Organizations and Management to ensure that the medical facility directors are aware that is the VHA policy for providers to assess veterans' use of marijuana, but providers are prohibited from recommending marijuana referrals to or completing paperwork for veteran participation in state marijuana programs. And 3. The directive for the VA medical facility director to ensure that the VA facility staff are aware of the following: the prohibition of recommending making referrals to or completing forms and registering veterans for the participation in state-approved marijuana programs. While similar proposals on veterans' medical marijuana access have been passed by both House of Representatives and Senate in the past years, they have never been enacted into law. Last year, when the House and Senate passed language was left out of the final bill sent to President Donald Trump, Mass holds marijuana moment that the exclusion was ridiculous. It was a great and easy opportunity to do so and a sensible thing to move forward, and detrimental to veterans to not do so, he said. Alrighty, guys. I know I said I was going to do another one, but I've been doing this for a little bit, and I am actually very hungry and like to go get more pizza. So, y'all have a wonderful day. And don't forget to catch my live on TikTok, Stoner Nation. Shop on TikTok. Just look up Stoner Nation and look for a logo that literally, a profile picture that literally says Stoner Nation Cannabis Lifestyle Marijuana Tips. But it's called Stoner Nation Shop. So, go check it out. And catch me live later. Y'all have a wonderful day.